Is that all there is? Is that all there is?
Tonight we're going to be working with that talk title of Is That All There Is, based on the song that we just heard. So if you're watching the video, we just listened to Is That All There Is by Peggy Lee. And you know, that song, I think what makes it so great is that she really expresses a sense of melancholy through it. It's not sadness. It's really just this sense of moving along through life with melancholy, because you know, when we have that feeling, we're really looking at life and saying, you know, is that all there is? Is there anything more? You know, is my life meaningless in some way? It's kind of the feeling tone that's underneath that song. And, you know, I wonder if you've ever felt that. I know certainly that I have. You know, that feeling that really life is not living up to my expectations of it. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is, what do we do with that? Why is it that we feel that way sometimes, right? I don't think we ever really live in that melancholy forever. You know, but when we're feeling that way, why do we feel that way? And then what can we do about it when we're feeling that way? What's kind of the way of getting us out of the melancholy? So, you know, the words of the song are great. They're really just, they have a lot of meaning behind them, I think. And each time she talks about these different pieces of her life, the fire where her father saves her, the circus, you know, when she's a little girl, and you know, going to the circus should be this awe-inspiring, really exciting thing to do. Or her first romantic relationship and how it ends. And each time she thinks, is that all there is? And in fact, in the one on the circus, what the lyrics say is that she felt like something was missing, but she didn't know what. You know, I think we get that feeling. It's kind of this feeling like we're, you know, holding a bag and we don't realize that there's a hole in the bottom of the bag. You know, and the world just keeps dumping more stuff in the bag, but the bag doesn't get any heavier. And we're wondering why, right? We're wondering why the bag is so light. You know, is that all there is in my bag, right? And so, you know, when that's how we're going about it, she, I think, has the great conclusion. You know, if that's all there is, my friend, then let's keep dancing, right? Break out the booze and have a ball. Because why not? Right? If life is not fulfilling you, if you're not feeling like your life is fulfilling, you know, why not just dance? What else is there? So, you know, what I think I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about that feeling. And I'd like to come from the place, you know, just bear with me on this, and let's assume that the reason we're feeling that melancholy feeling is because in this moment, we don't feel like our life has the purpose, maybe, that we think that it should have. So let's explore that. You know, how do we know what our life purpose is? I think there's two ways of kind of looking at it. The first way is, and we do this a lot, we look at it from a place of doing. You know, what am I doing in my life? And does my life have meaning because of what I'm doing? So I went to the internet, you know, did some research on the internet. And I think I was looking for kind of, what's the common man's definition of life's purpose? And I think I found it really well on a website by a guy named Mark Manson. And his website, he says it's called Personal Development That Doesn't Suck. I thought, okay, you got me there, right? And So he has this quote on there, and he says, "Here's the truth." Now, I always get a little worried when somebody starts with that kind of expression. Here's the truth. But he goes on, he says, "We exist on this earth for some undetermined period of time." Well, you can't argue with that, right? That's definitely true. "During that time, we do things." Yeah, I would guess that's true too for everybody. "Some of these things are important." I would hope so. I would hope that some of the things that I do are important. "Some of them are unimportant." Well, as much as it pains me to say, I would go along with that. Some of them aren't important. But then he goes on to say, "And those important things give our lives meaning and happiness. The unimportant ones basically just kill time." And I thought about it and I thought, well, I actually object to that last bit because where he says, "and those important things give our lives meaning and happiness," I actually think he has it backwards. Because it's not the important things that give our lives meaning. I think it's the meaning in our life that leads us to do important things, which then gives us happiness, right? So I think that, from my own perspective in my own life, I've kind of lived my life from that place of measuring my life from doing, right? And the problem with measuring your life from doing is that it kind of leads you down to this path of grandiosity. Thinking that your life has to be, this really grandiose life in order to have meaning. And it's a life of comparison, right? Where if you're really looking to see whether the things that you're doing are important, what you're really doing is you're comparing what you're doing, the doings that you are doing, right, to the doings that somebody else is doing. And you're trying to decide which one, are the ones that I'm doing as important as the ones he's doing, right? It's a life of comparison. I remember deciding when I was a kid, I was a very avid science fiction reader, and I decided I was going to, play an important part in the world because I was going to discover the Olson hyperdrive, which would be, the drive that would get our spaceships from this star to that star in like no time, right? Well, what could ever compare to that, right? That would be something that nothing else that anybody else would have ever done could compare. So I would win the meaning world. My life would absolutely have meaning because compared to everybody else, I had done something, really, really good, right? But the problem is that concept of living my life from a place of doing, it led to living going to school forever, and working, spending all my time doing that. And then when I graduated, it meant I was working 60 hours a week. And although I was, going up in the ranks of the company, which must have meant that I was doing well, right? I had that sense of melancholy. That song would have sung to me at that time of my life. So I don't really think that this place of coming from a place of doing as our life purpose really ever quite gets us there. So let's go to the other place that we can try and decide about our life's purpose, which is from a place of being, right? B-E-I-N-G, not B-E-A-N, right? So a place of our being, like we're human beings. So, there's actually a lot of people who have spoken to this over the years. There's a lot of quotes. So I picked a few that I thought we'd talk about. The first one is from Parker Palmer, who's a very famous author. He also, I really like this, he runs a Center for Courage and Renewal. You know, I think that's a wonderful thing. Anyway, he says, before I can tell my life what I want to do with it, I need to listen to my life to tell me who I am, right? Who I am. It's really about being. That's not a doing statement. It's not about what I'm doing. It's about who I am being. Emerson, who really needs no introduction, right? He says, the purpose of life is not to be happy. It is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. To have your life make some difference that you've lived and lived well. Now, I'm not going to argue with what he's saying, but I would say that if I've lived a life and lived it well, that I think happiness is a natural outcome of that, right? So I may not be living my life to be happy, but if I'm living it in such a way that I'm living it well, I believe you will be happy. Now, I'm likely to butcher this guy's name, Fyodor Dostoevsky. There we go, I did butcher it, yeah. And he wrote The Brother Karamazov, right? So he says, the mystery of human existence lies not in just staying alive, but in finding something to live for, right? But he's not saying something to do, right? When he's saying something to live for, I think he's talking about, you know, how am I being in that life? Ernest Holmes, the founder of religious science, says in the Science Mind textbook, and this is actually on page 38, so it's within those first 4 chapters, which I've read 100 times. And it's funny, I never noticed this before. He says, the sum total of all our thought, will, purpose, and belief creates a tendency in this law that causes it to react to us according to the sum total of that belief. I've always said, you know, that the law, the creative essence that God is, it reacts and creates out of what we think into it, based on what we think, what we believe, and what our intentions are. You know, and that's kind of similar to his thought, will, and belief. I never have said purpose. So I found it interesting that he's put purpose in there like that. And what that means to me then is that he is saying that purpose is one of the main drivers in the creative process, which is how our life ends up showing up, right? We think into it, we believe into it, we have intentions that go into it, and we have a purpose that kind of drives it also, is what he's saying. So he goes on to say on page 115, and this is a little bit wordy. I have a friend who says that Ernest Holmes is a bit wordy, and she's right on this one. But he says, the soul, being the seat of memory, already contains a record of everything that has ever happened to us. These memories as a whole constitute the subjective tendency of the individual life. This tendency can be changed through constant effort and a determined persistency of purpose. So what he's saying there is that, you know, we have all of these memories of all of our life that's kind of the tapes that are playing in our mind, right? They're the subjective, the unconscious part of our thinking. And that they are based on what we've already done. And yet, we can change everything that's gone on before by aligning with our purpose. We can move that regular thought that we have, and therefore our creative process. So I talked a little bit ago about my life from a place of doing. So I'd like to talk for a couple of minutes about my life from a different place, from a place of being. And so an example of that would be 3 years ago. It's actually 3 summers ago. Kathy Hearn gave a workshop at Namaste, and she did it on the Bhagavad Gita and the book, The Great Work of Your Life by Stephen Cope. And that particular summer was the summer after we closed the restaurant. And then here I am in summer, and I was in this place of, wow, okay, I'm not doing that. I thought I was going to be doing that, but I'm not doing that. What am I doing? You know, and I remember how kind of feeling a little bit of that melancholy being right there. Not as bad maybe as some of the other parts of my life, but I was feeling a little directionless. And, you know, what the Bhagavad Gita is, it's all about your Dharma. And Stephen Cope's book takes Dharma and it explains it. And he explains 4 pillars to your Dharma or to your life's purpose. And the first pillar is look to your Dharma, which means that a lot of people kind of give up searching for it. You know, if they didn't find it by the time they were 18, they're done, right? Or maybe they've been looking for it and they've come to kind of a crossroads. They need to make some decisions. And instead of deciding, they get out their lawn chair, right? Sit down, get nice and comfortable, and never quite get up again, right? They never continue the search. And he's saying that you really need to look for your Dharma, you need to look for it until you find it. Once you've found it, the second pillar comes in, which is do it full out. Pull out all the stops. Once you know what your purpose is, do it, right? Don't let any obstacles slow you down. Or whatever obstacles show up, know that they're going to be you're going to go around them or go over them one way or the other, right? The third pillar is let go of the fruits, which just means that when you're pursuing your Dharma, don't look for the fruits of your labor in the process. The fruits will come to you, but if your process is to look for the fruits instead of actually just being your Dharma, then it's going to confuse the issue and it's kind of going to get in the way. And then the last one is my favorite. Turn it over to God, right? When we turn it over to God, what we're saying is, I'm not going to be in charge of the doing. I'm going to be in charge of the being, right? I'm going to be in charge of my purpose and being my purpose, and I'm going to let God create, not just in my life and the doings of my life, but also the doings of all the people that I interact with too, right? It's far beyond what I can accomplish. It's turn it over to God. So I guess what I'm saying is that is that all there is, seems to be playing in your head at any particular point, and especially in the next coming week, right? That what I suggest for you is that you kind of look at, are you living from your life's purpose? Do you know what it is? And if you've been gauging your life's purpose by gauging what you're doing, maybe that's kind of why it's playing. The song is playing in your head. So maybe the answer to that is to go back and look at your life's purpose from a place of being. Thank you. Namaste. So let's go into a minute of prayer. Let's just ground this into a minute of prayer. I drop down inside of myself to that place that knows that it knows that it knows. I drop down inside of myself to that place that absolutely touches the life that God is, that knows that life as the magnificence that it is, that knows it as the creative essence that is back of all things visible, the invisible behind the visible. I know that life absolutely as the love and the peace and the joy that God is, all these qualities that we ascribe to it. And I know absolutely that my life and that your life is absolutely that life that God is, that we are one in the life, the power, the presence. We're that love, that peace, that joy that God is. And it's from that place of knowingness that I absolutely speak my word, knowing that the love that God is that total acceptance, that the love that God is knows us and blesses us. It enwraps us and enfolds us in that absolute knowing of just the preciousness of each and every human life. I know that the joy that God is bubbles up through us and as us, and that the purpose of our life moves us to a place of joy, moves us to a place of love and of being loving, that it moves us to a place of peace and living a peaceful life. And for knowing those truths today of each and every one of us here and beyond, I just give thanks. And I release this prayer into the law, knowing that it's already fulfilled in the mind that God is. And I say it is good and very good. And together we say, and so it is.